Hi, I'm Rex Sikes, author of Life on Your Terms, and you're watching my show, Create Your Best Life with Rex. My guests include some really brilliant people, great minds, who have tips and advice and suggestions and strategies and methods and principles and practices for you to transform your entire living experience and make it glorious beyond belief. So watch my show. Hi, I'm Rex Sikes, and you're watching Create Your Best Life with Rex. And I'm thrilled to have my guest today, Mr. Pete Bissonette. I've known Pete since the mid-'80s, when shortly after he and Dr. Paul Sheely created or started Learning Strategies Corporation in Minneapolis, Minnesota, a provider of wonderful self-help paraliminal audio programs, as well as a host of other things that you certainly want to get your hands on and utilize for your own transformation. He's also the author of a delightful book called Breakfast, Tea, and Bourbon, and you're going to want to pick that up. It's a novel about personal change with a treasure hunt involved. And he's also one of the founding members of the Transformational Leadership Council. And if you'll, you can see him right here. He's my guest, Mr. Pete Bissonette. I'm thrilled to have him. We're going to talk about business today and how you can scale your business, start it, grow it, and make it better. Pete, how are you?
Doing very, very fine. Thanks, Rex.
I have to say, I've known Pete now, 30-some plus years, and Pete has helped me. He's helped my business grow. You're so generous, and you're giving, and you mentor, and you advise, and you give tips and suggestions, sometimes without asking. I mean, I'll get something from you that is just a really positive message that says, hey, if you do this, you'll be better off. I so appreciate that and have appreciated it throughout the years. And that is why I wanted to have you on the show, because you know what you're doing. You've taken learning strategies from a tiny, starting point to where it is today. And I'll let you describe that.
That sounds good. And when you say about giving tips and advice, I started doing that because back in my early 20s, when I first started out being an entrepreneur and knowing absolutely nothing about anything and having to figure it all out, I knew nothing. And I couldn't afford to hire consultants. I couldn't afford anything because there was no money. So I would call people up, executives of companies or owners of companies, and ask them if I could take them out to lunch because I have some questions. And then I remember I took out a executive vice president at Pillsbury who was in charge of PR. I had some PR questions. Well, what ended up happening was that all these sessions, they would come out, they would give, and most of the time they would pick up the lunch tab. But that's how I learned so much. So I've always been very willing to help anybody else, because that's how everybody moves forward, is by sharing what they have and not keeping everything to themselves. That's why in the 1990s with Learning Strategies, we were one of the first companies to actually start working on joint venture projects with other companies. In other words, we'd find companies, programs that we'd recommend them, and the other company would recommend our programs in return. Because we never really looked at each other as competition. We looked at it as, hey, we are good people out doing good work. Let's find other good people doing good work and see how we can do it better together. And that's why our first ones, the Sedona Method with Hale Dwoskin or Bill Harris with Centerpoint, those were the first companies that we worked with, and then Nightingale Conant. So it's been a joy to work with folks through the years.
Well, and you've done so much with so many, and again, you've touched so many lives, both personally, professionally, and globally. So it's truly a testament to your attitude and your own generosity. So I appreciate that. So how did you develop yourself to this place? Because not everybody does. Some people look at everything as competition, or they want to crush everybody else. They don't look at it like you don't need to divide the pie. You just need to make more pies and share the good. So can you describe a little bit of your journey, because you know all this stuff. You're a consummate photo reader. You do all these wonderful things. So
yeah, I think it was just primarily because that's how I learned in the first place, was asking everybody else for advice and getting information from other people. And so when people would ask me, I would just naturally share. And in my 20s too, I did a lot of writing for magazines and newspapers. And one of the things that you learn there is that the only way that you can get a good story is if you get people to talk with you, and if you're able to share and be yourself with them, and then you can collect a lot of really good information that people want to read about. So it just was pretty much who I became in my 20s. I don't know what I did to do it. Maybe it was my upbringing, besides the things that I just mentioned.
Well, and let's also talk a bit about the book that you wrote, because it is a journey of exploration and a positive growth. So can you share the thinking behind writing a novel like that as opposed to a how-to?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. You mentioned the Transformational Leadership Council. So it was in July of 2013. We're in La Jolla. We had our summer meeting, and there's 8 of us at a round table for lunch, and they're all talking about the books that they're going to write. And someone says, well, when are you going to write a book? And I just looked at them, I'm not going to write a book. You guys are writing more books than we even need. So you're saying it all. I like to sell you books. I have no interest in writing a book. Then I stopped and I looked to the person on my left, which was my friend Nina Utney, and I said to myself, I think I'll write a book. I'll write a novel. And so that was where it started. And the book was interesting in that it was really a treasure hunt, in that the storyline involved these friends who went out on a treasure hunt. And woven between the lines of the story were clues to where I actually hid a treasure, that if you found the treasure, I'd pay you $50,000. And we had thousands of people out looking for the treasure. And Rex, we had, ultimately it was found, and it was in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And within a week, I was receiving email from dozens of people in Hot Springs, hot on the trail. Nobody found it. It wasn't for 6 months before somebody actually found the treasure. And it was, I did it just because to do something different and to have a book with a little bit more excitement in it so people can get involved with it. And for the treasure hunters, most of them are reading the book 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. Now tell me an author who wouldn't love to have his book read that many times by their readers. And that's how I was able to get some of the little lessons, little things that I put into it. The real reason I wrote it, though, was to have fun. But I kind of wanted to shake things up a little bit in my life, try something different. I don't know if I got into a point where I was in a routine, but I was ready for a different adventure.
Well, it certainly was quite the journey and quite the positive outcome. I think also, though, that's part of why you're so successful, and you can verify this or not. You have a way of engaging people, of creating fascination and curiosity, and that's what your book did. The idea being there's something hidden here, you can find it, and people reading again and again and again, but they come back again and again and again. Can you talk a little bit to that? Because I think so many people tell, but you seem to elicit, you seem to bring out from people as opposed to push onto people, and that's really a remarkable trait.
Well, see, when Paul Sheely and I got together for learning strategies, the first main program that we did was the photo reading program, where you can go through a book as fast as you can turn the pages. We start you off at 25,000 words a minute. Right. Phenomenal program. And so when we got together, played with it, just completely blew me away. And within a couple of weeks of me learning how to do it, I was hauling my office furniture up the elevator because, hey, I'd known Paul Sheely for a couple of years, and I'd always wanted to work with him, but his stuff was a little bit esoteric. It wasn't, it was like, how do you really relate it to what's going on in real life? And I couldn't promote it. I didn't know what to do with it. Then all of a sudden this came along and I said, yes, this is something that everybody in the world needs. So we got together, we played with it, we got the photo reading business going, and then and we were doing it, at something at that speed. Most people believe it's not possible. Well, all my life I knew something like that would be possible. I just did not know how to do it. And when Paul was able to uncover the strategies using neuro-linguistic programming to figure out how somebody can go through a book that fast, I took to it instantly and immediately. And so then that was a matter of, hey, telling everybody, hey, you got these incredible resources within. You just have to learn how to do it. Paul Scheele, figured out how people were using their brains and how they're clicking the circuits in the brains. And then he developed a program to guide other people to do the same thing so they can have the same results. And that's at the foundation of so many of the programs that we do at Learning Strategies, especially the paraliminals. The paraliminals where you hear a voice in each ear speaking to different parts of your brain. They're like relaxation audios. They're designed to help you learn new strategies for responding to what's going on in your world. And that's where the company Learning Strategies comes from. It's not about reprogramming yourself. It's not so much about changing yourself, but it's about learning how to use those vast internal resources so that you can get from life what you want. And so that's been through everything that we've been doing since we started way back in the 80s. And it will continue long into the future, too.
Wow, very cool. Well, what I absolutely appreciate and where I have a great affinity for you and Paul is the notion of trust, that the work is based on trust your inner resources, trust your non-conscious, trust the universe. It's based on developing a faith or a trust in yourself. It doesn't have to be religious. It doesn't have to be any of that kind of stuff. It's just opening up, letting go, and allowing the inner to express itself, and again, we use terms like reprogramming or self-development and all that kind of stuff, but it really is none of that. It truly is learning how to just use what's within you already. I'm a firm believer that we're born perfect. We get conditioned to cover that up, so that it's hidden. And then the life is the opportunity to let go of the mask, let go of the conditioning and the covering, and to find out who we authentically are. And that work is definitely part of what you embody, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, and one of the things that folks have to do is they have to give themselves some slack. When something doesn't work out the way that you want it to, what do you learn from it? How can you do it differently and go back and try it again? That's part of Paul Scheele's 4-step model in natural brilliance. It's about playing, it's about trying something, it's about doing something, and then coming back, noticing the results that you got, what can you do differently, and go forward with that. It's that step by step, not putting too much pressure on yourself. That's why folks have a lot of success with our programs, because that's woven into our programs. That's the way to do it. Like Chenny Lin from Springforce Qigong, he always says, good, better, best. There's not the only way to do something. There's a variety of ways to do it. You find the way that works best for you that allows you to get the results that you want.
And I want to say, I'm a huge fan of play and exploration. My own favorite personal quote is, "Exploration is the doorway to adventure, and awareness is the key." It is the idea that we play, we explore, we let go, we correct, we adjust, continue, and we move forward. We don't, except in rare occasions, and I don't mean this in any less than glorious way, but we don't have to take massive action all the time. We don't need adrenaline pumping through our system. No. Usually, that creates a fight or flight response. And in a training room or in a learning situation, adrenaline is not what you want to have, coursing through your veins. So the idea of play and let go and relaxation and acceptance and learning and if you make a mistake, pat yourself on the back because, hey, you know what? We're human. We don't know everything in advance of getting there. So it's a very permissive and open and a validating approach, which is truly something that I embrace, and I know you guys embrace, and it's truly one of the reasons why I think you enjoy such enduring success, because that is the message that gets spread in all of your messages and your programs.
Yeah, and like what you said about not having to go full throttle all the time. When I started working with Jetta Molly, she ended up creating a series of meditation programs for us. And I was doing these 2-hour, every Thursday, 2-hour meditation sessions with her by Skype. Did that for 8 months. And she helped me understand myself as an energetic being, which was just so cool. She gave me, intellectually I knew everything, but she helped me experience it. So then I knew everything. But one of the things she said in the first session, she says, "What's your purpose?" And I said, "Oh, geez, Jetta, because I'm going to tell you what everybody thinks my purpose is and what my purpose should be, then I'll tell you what I really think it is. And I said, everybody thinks that I'm all out there about changing the world and so on and so forth. And I go, yeah, I think that's great. And I think that's a nice, happy byproduct of what it is that I do. But the truth is, all I want to do is to be happy. And I want to live my life so that I'm happy. And then she said, that's it. You want to live your life so that you're happy. You don't have to do anything. Just don't cause contraction in other people. It's about being either neutral or being expansive and not contracting in. And that's the way that I pretty much live my life. And when she was able to express it like that, that really held true for me. So it gave me that permission to continue the work that I was doing without having, I was never really about having to prove myself to anybody, but there was always that element there. So without having to prove myself to anybody. And it was just, how do you live a great life and not cause harm to other people? And as a result, you end up doing well for other people.
That's beautifully put. And I also like what you said is you knew it, but it's a different to experience it. A lot of us intellectually know everything we should do, know everything we shouldn't do.
We've read the books, we've been to the seminars. Yeah,
exactly. And we've done it all, but we don't experience it. We don't put it into practice. I mean, it's kind of like, as an actor, I used to teach acting. I still do, but I used to teach acting, and people would say, well, what's more important, the script or the actor? Now, in an acting class, I would take the script, I would throw it on the floor and go, act.
Yeah.
And we would all wait for it to do something, and obviously it doesn't do anything. It takes the actor to bring it to life. And so the same is true about us as experiencers. We can know it, but till we experience it, until we make it, till we own it, and until we actually apply it. And I think, there are people who get emails every day, but they never click a link, they never open them, they never go to that seminar. They never talk to their spouse in a loving way. They just know they should. They just don't engage. And so.
Yeah, but that engagement is so key. And that's one of the issues that the last, half dozen years have been so important for us at Learning Strategies is that back in the 90s, when we first started doing the personal learning courses, the home study courses, a guy named Kevin Trudeau,
I love Kevin. He's an associate friend.
Yeah, really interesting person. And when he was the one who actually put pressure on us, and it was pressure to create the photo reading personal learning course, which was our first personal learning course, because we kept saying, no, you can't teach this stuff. You have to be in person. You need seminars. And so we wrote the photo reading book. That came out in 1993, and we've sold a couple million copies of it since then. And it had the full system in the book. And then people started to call us or write us to tell us that they were able to learn photo reading from the book. So, we started to scratch our heads. Maybe you can do photo reading in a personal learning course, learn how to go through the book as fast as you can turn the pages. So we set off on this process to create the home study course, to create the process. Paul created the process, and then we built the course. But one of the things that Kevin said, he says, only worry about the first tape, the pre-CDs, or the first tape in the course, because most people are only going to listen to that first tape, and if they don't like it, they're going to return the course. And some of the people will go on to finish the course. So we made sure the first CD was really, really good. And what we found out was that there was a majority of people who bought the course simply were not using the course. And so we tried everything to change. We re-recorded some of the sessions to encourage people to continue with it. And that's always been the challenge with folks, is because they'll read about a program, they like the idea of it, they buy the course because they want to bring it into life, but then they leave it up on the bookshelf. Yeah. And you really got to use it, and you got to bring it into your life. So how do you do that? Because this, when we're recording this, it's 2020. It's the year of the pandemic. In March, well, first of all, Spring Forest Qigong is a program that we've been doing since the late 1990s, and it's like a Tai Chi-like movement, and it's for healings. And we've been doing it at the office every day at 11:30 since the late 1990s. And not everybody at the office, but a whole bunch of us will get together to practice for half an hour. Well, the pandemic came along, and we're all going to be working from home. And so we thought, well, let's do Zoom and we can still practice together. But then somebody said, and I don't know which one of us was, well, why don't we invite our clients to join us? And we're saying, well, why not? Because clients often will come into the office and join us for a half an hour of Qigong. So then we invited clients. And so we had 1,200 people, and we're still doing it at 11:30 every day. But here's what we found out when we surveyed the people who had joined. 44% of them never did the practice of Qigong after they went through the course.
Wow.
44%. Well, you know, we've always rationalized it in the past was that, well, okay, just knowing something does help with your quality of life when you can know what the possibilities are. You can have that kind of experience. And the other way to look at it is that if it wasn't for those people who are buying the course and not really using it, we would not be able to market courses. We couldn't afford to be able to market the courses because these people are kind of like providing the scholarships for people who will really use the program. But now what we're finding is that because of this daily practice, the people who want to have that community to practice with, even though they're practicing in their own homes and just looking at a computer screen, watching us practice on Zoom, it really makes a difference for them. And so for anybody who gets the course, the idea is, okay, how do you, great, you were interested, you raised your hand, you got the course, you got to put it in your calendar. You got to put it into action of some sort. Otherwise, you're not going to do the course, and you have to commit that you're going to finish it. And then the next step is you got to keep using whatever it is that you learned. It's like with phone reading. You know, it's great to be able to go through the book as fast as you can turn the pages. But if you're not doing it, if you're not applying it to the books, what good is it? And so that's the key thing: is how do you stay engaged with something? So, for step one, get excited. Get involved with the program. Step two, actually do the program. Step three, stay with the program and engage it. And that's so important for everybody these days.
Again, it's beautifully, beautifully put. Yeah, I don't want to make a political statement here, but it's always like 1 or 2 or 3% that actually do take appropriate action and get engaged, whether it's financially, you know, that's why they say there's room at the top. It's always lonely up there because so few people bother to put themselves up there. They sadly get into a comfort zone or into their habits or their conditioning, and then they don't get out of it and they don't engage. And that those few that do, you know, find the real difference in their life. I want to let you talk. I just want to say the other thing that was really beautiful, really beautiful, because it puts a lot of things into perspective, especially for our viewers who are starting their businesses, whether they're doing training or seminars or coaching or whatever the business is. It could be a mom and pop shop somewhere, a brick and mortar store. Is the idea that those people are paying scholarships for those other people. You know, in other, that's a blessing, not a detriment. So it's a really a positive way to think about it. So,
yeah, it is. And another thing you said, you know, but sadly, a lot of people don't use, but it's not so much the sadly for the individual because you don't really have to do anything. It's like what Jetta was saying is about, you know, how do you live a happy life and not cause problems with others? And I've talked to so many of our clients who purchase a lot of our programs, if not all of them, who haven't used the programs. They have them on their shelves or they have them in their online library. And I said, well, why do you do that? And they said, and they'll more often than not say, well, I'd like to bring it into my life. I know that I can bring it in my life now. I know where the resources are. And I also kind of want to support you guys so you keep doing what you're doing. Right. So, you know, to get a program, if timing isn't right for you, fantastic. You got it on your shelf. You got it in your library to use it at some point. At least you know it's there. What you don't want to do is to beat yourself up for not doing the course. You know, if you're feeling lousy because you bought the course, you haven't used it, okay, then figure out how to put it into action. One of our coaches will help you free of charge for that. If that's ever an issue for anybody.
Well, and I always like to point out that you can take it step by step, chunk by chunk. You don't shove the whole meal in your face.
Exactly. You
know, so you crack it open, you do a little bit, you play with it. You only wake up when you wake up. You know, you're only ready when you're ready. The difference, however, is most people don't buy a car, and well, some do. But don't drive a car and put it in their driveway and never touch it. They don't buy a television set and never turn it on. They don't buy a blender and then, well, they might get around never to juicing or doing what they want to do with the blender, but they're using it for something else. So, but when it comes to taking online programs or courses, a lot of those do remain unopened or books. I, for a long, long time, didn't want, and I'm a dinosaur in this, and I admit it. You guys, Joe Vitale, I mean, all my friends, everything that Rex, the internet, get on it, do this. I was so interested in one-on-one or small group personal transformation and the transmission that happens in a live situation or live setting that it took me a long time to even want to put out home study programs, because I want people to come in here. And I didn't want to put out books, because when you put out a book, they would read the book and then they would sit there and go, oh, I read this in the book. Or, there were a lot of impediments to what I considered a live experience. I'm not about so much the education side of it. I want the experience to be there. And I want, and I'm not saying, so it took me a long time. They had to convince me. And I said, well, all right, I'll put tapes and a video and the home study program out, because at least that's more of the experience and not just a book that they read, And I think books are great. But what you showed about photo reading is wonderful. But I think books are great really after the fact. Like, you don't read a book to learn how to ride a bike. You learn how to ride a bike, and then you read a book to learn how to do riding bike better. Once you have some experience, you can tweak it and do much. But anything I say is subject to, all of it is BS, because it can be anything for the person who dives in and does whatever they do with it. It's not, there are no real rules to any of this stuff. There are.
And Rex, I built my house.
Yes, what an incredible house you built.
Yeah, well, thank you. I did a lot of the work of the house myself. I was a general contractor. I put in the floors. I did the stonework.
Wow.
I didn't do the mudding on any of the sheetrock walls, because I just couldn't get good at that. I did the electrical. I did 85% of the electrical. And someone asked me, well, I didn't know you knew all this stuff. And I said, I didn't. Before I built the house, I hadn't even wired a light switch before in my life. Well, how'd you do it? And I said, well, two things. Number one, I knew how to get information from books. And number two, I knew how to ask people questions. And so when it came to the electrical stuff, I went to the library, photoread every book in the library for wiring a house and for electricity and that. I did it in the bookstores, and I bought a couple guides to use. And then I called up and started talking with electricians. I met them, asked them questions. Everybody was willing to share. And the next thing you know, I'm building my home. And I just absolutely loved it. And I built a house too, primarily because like I said about writing the book, was, I wanted to shake things up. I wanted to do something different. And Vera Birkenbiel, she is the author. She was the author of our Memory Optimizer course that came out in the late 90s. Wonderful course. And one of the things that she told me, she says, Pete, if you want to stave off the aging of the brain and any dementia or anything like that, you want to take on a project now at your age. And I was in my mid 40s at the time. And she said, I'd take on a project that is so different from anything you've ever done in your life, and just do it. And you'll build in more neural pathways, and you'll do so much for your brain health that will serve you long into the future. So I thought about it, and I said, I'll build a house. I built a house.
Well, more power to you. That's awesome. And I also appreciate the idea of going and photo reading. That to me is different than the conscious reading that people do when they try and sit down and absorb a book. You're data dumping. I mean, you're taking an entire gestalt and putting it into your unconscious, your subconscious, your non-conscious. And I appreciate that approach to it, and then the asking questions and then teasing out the information and then actually doing. But
asking questions, that's one of the reasons that photo reading works so well, because you're going through the book at 25,000 words a minute. That fast, you can't possibly know what's in the book, because your conscious mind just gets overloaded, but it's there. Then the idea is, how do you activate it so that you can use the information? And one of the activation techniques or processes, whatever we call mind probing, which is where you ask questions. And you can ask questions, you close your eyes and ask questions about what's in the book, or questions that you have about the content of the book. Or you can go to other people, like I did with electricians, and ask the questions. And all of a sudden, everything from the books started to come alive in those conversations. So then when I'm doing it in real life in my home, yes, it was like a Harry Potter experience of everything coming together.
Well, and what you demonstrate and what you speak to is the idea that you have it within, and then it's just a matter of bringing it to the surface by asking questions. When I was 25 years old, I had a trauma in my life that I then ended up locking myself in an apartment for 6 weeks and discovered the power of questions, and then created something called directed questions at that time. So whenever anybody says I ask questions, I'm like so thrilled, because and why I appreciate you and Paul so much, and our journey through the 80s, is that so much of what we were talking about in those days was about new neural connections, creating new pathways, that learning, was an ongoing experience, that you didn't have to have brain atrophy, that by adding novelty and doing different things, you could actually grow your brain. Neuroplasticity was not a word that was even in use at that time, and we talked about that. We talked about Tesla for so long, and nobody knew who Tesla was in the late 80s, and people were like, who's that? And we said, well, Tesla, the inventor. Now Tesla is like, so, extremely popular, and people talk about neuroplasticity and growing pathways and, and learning. And so much of that, from ancient times to modern times, has always been available, but it is truly something I look back on our journeys separately, independently, and together, in that whole exploration of just allowing yourself to I don't want to say maximize, because that sounds like it's insufficient, but to tap into your wholeness, your authenticness. I do firmly believe we're source. We are the creative energy of the universe, and the only thing that prevents us from manifesting anything and everything we want is the fact that we don't think that we are, and we operate as limited creatures and think we're separate, instead of going, wow, I am the collective power of everything that is, and so.
That's hard for the conscious mind to.
It
really,
is.
It was like what I said about working with Jed Amali, those 2-hour meditations every Thursday morning, just she and I on Skype. I started to experience it. I knew it, and I remember it was the Thursday before Thanksgiving of 2007, and all of a sudden, I'm closing my eyes and I'm seeing things with my eyes closed, and all that. And I saw this blue pattern showing up right here. And then she said, so you've been seeing this blue pattern in your mind, this energetic pattern. And she told me who it was on the spiritual side. And then I started to see over on this side, this big gold glow. And she says, now a gold glow has coming in, and that's your guardian angel. This is how you can talk with your guardian angel. And then I saw this deep, purplish, almost black, beautiful energy coming in from straight in front of me. And as it's coming in, she's saying, and now you're seeing your master guide coming to you. And she's teaching me how to be able to work with these, And it was at that moment that all of a sudden, everything just kind of fell into place, and everything that I had understood intellectually made sense for me. And it was like it was the way I could see how it worked. And that was a huge difference for me. And that was the big thing where all of a sudden I could wrap my mind around things. And before that, I had a hard time. This was in 2007. I've been doing this learning strategies then for 20 some years. But it was then that it all came together for me, and I began to understand how this all works.
Beautiful, beautiful. And, and I'm fond of saying, and all I did was add a word to it, that only when the student is ready, or the disciple.
Yeah, exactly.
Only when they're ready does the teacher appear, whether that's an inner teacher, an outer teacher, an experience in life, or whatever it might be. And but we wake up. Everybody eventually wakes up, and like right now we're talking. Millions of people are sleeping, and other people are rising. It all happens in its own time, and in its own way. I'm fond of of a story that I heard many years ago, which was, what's it like to awaken? And they said, well, think of it this way. There's someone sleeping, and they're sleeping in bed. Another person's sleeping out in the garden. Another person's in a hammock. Another person's down at the beach. And they all wake up. And then they say, what was it like to awaken? And one says, well, I saw this blue expanse and waves, and it was gorgeous. And you could hear seagulls. And another person says, oh, there were roses and trees and flowers and bees and birds humming around me. Another said, I was just comfortably cushioned in this warm environment, with you know, so we all describe our awakening somewhat differently because of the experience that we have, but we ultimately can all wake up. And the beauty of it is when we do get out of our way enough to allow it to just coalesce and fit for us, and it does that aha kind of experience where it comes together is a beautiful experience.
And it's absolutely okay if it doesn't come together.
Exactly.
You know, that's, you know, we have plenty of circle of lives. We'll have plenty of opportunities to experience it. So, Rex, there's a question you should ask me. And the question should be, how'd you get into all this?
That was my next question, Pete. How did you get into all of this?
I'm gonna tell you 3 stories, and you pick out the story that you want. Okay.
Okay.
For Paul Scheele and me with Learning Strategies, this is back when I was doing a lot of writing for newspapers and magazines, and I was driving on Highway 7 in Minnetonka, and I heard 15 seconds of an interview with Paul Scheele and his first business partner, Mark Kinnick, on KSDP radio, and they were talking about how you can tell how a person is thinking by watching their eye movement, you know, some basics of NLP. And I thought, oh my God, that's cool. That was the end of the program, 15 seconds. It was the end of the program. So I called them up and I said, hey guys, teach me some of this stuff and I'll write an article about you. We got together and spent a few hours with them, ended up writing 4 articles for them, got hundreds of new clients. They totally fried my mind, opened me up to some possibilities and things that I had no idea. And it was just so cool. And then a couple years later, that's when Paul Scheele called me up and he said, Pete, what if you could be taught to go through a book as fast as you can turn the pages? And I said, Paul, if that's the case, it's time for a career change. And at the time I was in sports promotion, doing a lot of writing, but I was promoting this guy who thought he was Houdini getting out of locks and chains, jumping into the Mississippi off of the Hennepin Avenue Bridge. This other guy who thought he was Tarzan, swimming to Mississippi. I was doing professional wrestling, roller derby, bicycle races, ski races, all that kind of stuff. I was just having a blast promoting these kind of events. But then a couple of weeks later, I'm hauling my furniture up the elevator. That's story number 1. Story number 2 goes back earlier in time. About the time I was finishing up with college, 2 people within the space of a couple months gave me 2 books. The first book was Illusions by Richard Bach. And the second book was The Magic of Thinking Big. So I read those and that kind of opened me up and I just kept, you know, reading everything I could come across. The third way goes back to when I was 4 years old and mom's washing dishes in the kitchen. And I walk in with my notebook, which was only a piece of cardboard folded in half with scribbles and I didn't know how to write. And we didn't have money for in notebooks. I just used a piece of cardboard. And I said, Mom, when I graduate from college, and she stopped washing dishes and turned to me and said, where'd you learn? You know, she's thinking to herself, where'd you learn about college? And I said, Mom, when I graduate from college, I'm going to use a computer.
Wow.
Now, this was 1959.
Wow.
Yeah. And she said, and I said, and I'm going to use a computer to put on parades and carnivals. Okay. So we'll pause here for a second. Sure enough, when I graduated from college, I bought an Apple II computer, a serial number 14,000. So it was one of the first ones ever made. And I used it to put on golf tournaments. And then I ended up going from there through my 20s, using computers for all sorts of events. Then Mom told me, she says, and then you said, when I turn 30, I'm going to start working with the human mind.
Wow.
Well, Paul Scheele and I got together in September of 1985. Both Paul and I turned 30 in June of 1985. So true enough to what I told Mom way back when I was 4 years old, when I turned 30, I would work with the human mind. And so how did I get into it? I think this was one of those drives, one of those things that I came into this life with. And then it was a matter of allowing it to unfold. And, you know, I built a house, so I designed the house and all that too. And one of my favorite activities as a kid was just drawing up floor plans of houses. And I came across a box of them about a month or so ago with, I don't know, a few dozen different floor plans. And this was back when I was, 4, 5, 6 years old, the basic rudimentary. I did homes, I did jails, and I did hospitals. Don't know why I did those. But the other thing too, right along with that, is that, so then I ended up designing my house. And my favorite, I had a huge sandbox, and I had one of the games that I loved to play In order for my friends to play in the sandbox, I would make them play my other game because they didn't want to play with it otherwise, and that was playing publisher. And we would sit in the living room on TV chairs. Mom would get us old magazines, Better Homes and Gardens, those kind of things. And we would sit for 20 minutes circling every dot in the magazine, every period, every dotted I, every dotted J, semicolon, and all that, because that's what publishers did. Well, what am I doing now? We're creators and publishers of these programs. Right. So I think I had all these things that I came into my life with that unfolded and led to what I'm doing now with learning strategies.
I think that's beautiful. And it appears that we all are we all Geminis?
Yeah.
I turned 30 that year too in June.
Yes. Oh, there you have
it. Very cool. Listen, that is truly beautiful, and I would go with the 4-year-old story and the rest as part of the unfolding, because I do I when I was 6 I wanted to be a mystic, and when I was 4 I wanted to be an actor, and I started reading Napoleon Hill at 11. But I mean, I can remember sitting on my mom's lap watching Duck Soup with the Marx Brothers, going, "That's what I want to do. I want to be those guys. I want to be in that kind of situation." And then, I was raised Catholic, so the only kind of mystical experience I knew was the priest. And so I thought, I want to do that. I want to have this like upward, downward connection going on. And so I started asking my mom to read things like the Bhagavad Gita and different books that I couldn't read at 6 years old, to me. So I think we come into this world. I mean, I don't usually talk this way because for some people, they aren't ready to hear it. But the idea being, I do think we come in with a purpose, a mission, and a vision, and it's just whether we discover it this time around or not, and that ultimately we will. And like you said, you can do it or not do it. Everything is permissible, because that's what everything is about. I so appreciate this, and this is absolutely marvelous. What I would like to do because we've got about 25 minutes left in this particular segment, what I want to make sure that I do is to ask you, for those people who are out there who are considering starting a business, because I used to say in my business, and I don't think I've ever told you this, but I would often turn around to the office manager or the other people working, and I say, I need my own Pete Bissonette. I need a Pete Bissonette in my business, because you have a way of putting things together and a way of making things happen. And like I said, you were always very generous, and you were sharing and mentoring people in my business back in those days too. So for those people who are starting out right now, maybe some of the people listening, they're NLPers or hypnotists, and they want to have a coaching practice or a life coach, or they're meditators, or somebody wanting to open a yoga studio, or they're opening a bakery or a gluten-free. I mean, it's I don't want to restrict it to any particular business. Because it's not just about the kind of work we do, but it's about business in general. The attitudes and the principles and practices that you embody, and we're learning a lot from you. So, in this discussion, but that you would suggest to people who are starting out and trying to make their first dollar in a business and then scale it.
Well, you know how you were saying when you were a kid and you're watching the Marx Brothers, you knew exactly that's what you wanted to do? Mm-hmm. I knew at that time that's exactly what I did not want to do. And in my 20s, when I would go to these events and listen to speakers, I knew exactly I never wanted to be a speaker. When I started to work with Paul Sheely, I knew exactly I never wanted to be a teacher. When I started to work with different mentors to help create their courses, I knew I never wanted to create models that people would follow, the step 1, 2, and 3, because it's not in my nature. So when you ask me, what are the qualities that will make a good entrepreneur, or what you should work with, I really don't know. I don't know. That's not the way my brain works. And, people, we have our one of our paraliminals with J.J. Virgin and Paul Sheely is the miracle mindset. And that helps you develop different qualities, such as courageousness. And of course, right now, that's the only one of the 5 that I remember on it. But so it's like I don't know how to answer that. All I know is that for me, I knew all my life that I would be in business of some sort. I would either be in business or be like you, Rex, a priest. And it's funny now with all the spiritual stuff that we're doing and with the Qigong and all that kind of stuff, it's kind of like that's kind of come full circle in its own way. And so I don't know the answer. Other than I always knew I wanted to be in business, and I did what I needed to do, and I enjoyed it, and I tried to do it in a way that maintained integrity for myself and everybody involved. So if you have some specific questions about something, I'm happy to answer, but I don't have my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Well, I think first off that people can notice the attitude, the openness, and the positivity that comes from you, and take that as a good smattering or sampling of what might be worth adopting or considering when exploring business opportunities. The fact that you decided that you knew your purpose early on, what you wanted to do and what you didn't want to do, I think those are good points. Those are things that people need to embody. But if you can't say, here, this is what I would recommend, then let's go back and explore how you did it with learning strategies. How did you move it from a small company to a larger company? Obviously, you got good at marketing.
Yeah, well, actually, what I got good at was, Paul and I, in the early days, it was, especially when we were creating the paraliminals, it was like, what paraliminal did we want for ourselves? The first one that we created was the new behavior generators, because we knew we wanted to make changes in our own behaviors. And then it became prosperity. It became self-esteem supercharger, 10-minute supercharger, so we could get through the day without having to have a cup of coffee or anything like that. So it's like we kept creating things that we wanted for ourselves. And then at some point we started to realize it's not always just about ourselves, it's about our clients too. What did our clients need? So then we started to really look at what our clients were needing. I knew that when people came into the photo reading seminar, we needed them to have results. Otherwise, they'd ask for their money back. So I was there for supporting and helping people with the process because I wanted them to have the results because we want to have an ongoing business, right? So that at some point, the focus shifted from the fact that this is a business, we're trying to make it an ongoing business, to how do we serve our clients? What is it that they want? How do we want to be treated in that situation? So when we set up our satisfaction guarantees and how we work with folks with coaching and all that kind of stuff, the free coaching, it was always what would we want for ourselves that we can give to everybody else, and how can this happen? And so then we're always asking, when you're talking about the internet, how you like to do one-on-one and not so much a home study course or the internet, then we kept asking the questions. We kept listening to what our clients were saying and what they wanted. So, you heard why we came up with the personal learning course for photo reading. Well, that's how it ended up happening with everything. And if you would take a snapshot of learning strategies today and compared it to learning strategies 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, all the way into the 80s, you'd see a different company. You'd see a lot of the same employees. We have some folks have been with us 27, 28 years. And so, we have longevity with our employees and our the people come with us every day. But the business kept changing because we kept having to look at what is going on, what do people want, and how do we deliver to that. And there's a lot of things we chose not to do. There's a lot of marketing techniques that we simply don't use because it just feels funny. I don't like it when people use those techniques on us. So we try to keep it as authentic and real as possible. And as such, there's some things we haven't done. There's some parts of our business that could be a lot larger if we would only do this. But it's like I don't like the manipulation parts of some of the marketing techniques and strategies that are out there. I know that when I first started out with Paul, I had no marketing experience whatsoever. I was writing. I knew how to write, and I knew how to do putting on all these special events. I knew how to do promotion, how to get radio and TV and newspapers to cover us. So it's all about how do you create something that gets people to open their eyes. And so that's what we were doing. And then a friend of mine gave me a cassette tape of Jay Abraham. And Jay Abraham is a marketing guru, really a guru. And this was way back in the 1980s. And his whole thing was direct response advertising. So direct response is when you put out like a brochure or something that has an offer on it and a telephone number or a web address to go do something specifically, as opposed to just telling you about something. So it's always about, I listened to that cassette tape, and I listened to it 50 times, 100 times, or whatever. Couldn't afford to buy his full program, but I kept listening to that. And every story that he did, I kept saying, well, how can we apply this to what we're doing? And so we would test different things because he talked about testing. And so we were selling the paraliminals at the time, and one at a time. And he was talking about special offers. And so we said, well, what if we did buy 3 and get 1 free? And so we did that, and that really worked. And then we said, well, what if we would do, and if your dollar value of this of the invoice of the order is greater than such and such, what if you got another paraliminal for free? We found out that did not work. So it's always about us looking at what other people are doing, what other people are saying, and say, hey, how does this apply to our business and to what we're doing? I'll give you another classic example. This was in 2011. December 2011, I got this direct mail piece from Bose, these sound system people, and they were offering a headset, 12 payments at $25. And I'm thinking to myself, $300 for a headset, fine, I'll pay that. But who would ever buy a headset at 12 payments at $25? So I brought that letter to the office and met with Deborah, who's my chief marketing person. And we kept looking at it. We talked about it for a couple of days. And then at one point, one of us realized, wait a minute, this is December. In December, if you sell through the mail, you're putting your best foot forward, which means it's the thing that works the best to get people to raise their hands. They would have tested all the other offers, and this is the one that works. And so we said to each other, we got to try this. Well, we have a course called Abundance for Life, and we had just sent it to the printers the day before. We called the printers and we said, stop, we want to change the offer. So we took a segment of the mailings. I don't remember how many we were mailing. Let's say we were mailing out 50,000 brochures. We took a segment of them, and it could have been just 5,000 or 10,000 brochures, rewrote the offer, and offered the payment plan of 12 payments of $25. And sure enough, the results we got from that mailing was 65% greater for those who got the payment plan offer than those who got the regular payment plan offer. The regular payment plan offer, the payment plans were like $80 a month, and these are $25 a month. And so then we incorporated, we moved it into all of our programs, and we're still doing them because we find out that's what people want. That's how they're, and we can't test out of it. And so when you look at what we're doing, on the business side of it, it keeps evolving, it keeps changing. When you look at what the courses are, we went from, in the 1990s, we had small courses that were 6 tapes, 7 or 8 tapes. In the early 2000s, clients started saying they wanted more, so we would come up with levels, level 1, level 2, and level 3. And then as that went on, that changed again, and even how we deliver it. So it's always evolving. We have to pay attention, and we have to be always asking, well, what are they doing that can apply to us? And it's not just other people that are in the industry, but it's like Bose. Bose headsets is not we're not in their business. But we looked at what they're doing and we said, how can we apply that to what we're doing in our business? Because if it's working there, maybe nobody else is doing it in our business. And sure enough, nobody was really doing that kind of payment plan in our business.
Well, I mean, geez, you just spoke volumes of beautiful and wonderful advice for people, and suggestions of one attitude of being open and curious, asking questions, also seeking to provide value for your clients and your customers and finding out what they want. I also think it's important to go back to, you wanted new behaviors because you understood new behaviors were important, and that you can't get a change if you don't change something. If you're not going to move forward if you don't do something different. And so you start with the attitude, the mindset, the new behaviors, and from there into prosperity and abundance and those kinds of things. But you took it, and again, I go back to the fact that some people are so busy trying to beat their competition, and instead you look at it like, how do I serve better, and what if I do this, and you test. I mean, you just you tested a segment and you find out if it works, and some things work and some things don't, but it's because you're open and you're willing, and you're also listening. You're sensitive to those, to the marketplace, as well as what people want and need. Which I think in any business, this is stellar. And I hate to use the word advice, but it's stellar practices. It's putting principles.
It is, yeah. It's the best practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you exactly. And one of the reasons that I'm still here after all these years, so we're the same age, and all of our friends are retiring, right?
Right.
And my friends are saying, why, when are you going to retire? My brothers and sisters are retiring. I'm going, well, I'm not going to retire.
Yeah.
Well, why not? I said, I love it here. I love what I'm doing here. Yeah, okay, man, I'm at home now, but oh my God, I love being at home. I just like going to the office, but boy, I like working from home more. So why retire when you're enjoying it? And we created a business that it is fun for us to work at, and we get satisfaction from it. There isn't a whole lot of things that I would, at any given time, that I'd rather be doing. I don't know if there's anything that I'd rather be doing at any given time, except when I have a problem to solve. Sometimes it's probably better, oh, God, I'd rather be on the beach right now. But, it's fun to solve problems. I mean, that's that creativity, that resourcefulness, that ingenuity, when you can rally those inner resources. When you talk about what qualities or mindsets, that's the type of stuff you want to bring up. You want to tap into the best that you have and bring it out into your life and into your business and into your life. That's another thing that's really interesting, Rex. It was about, 6 or 7 years ago, all of a sudden our clients started to tell us, okay, so I love your programs, but how do I bring what I'm learning from you into my work? We started to realize people were living different lives. They would have their personal development life, and that's who they would be outside of the office, but they were a different person in the office. And people started to realize they wanted to be the same person. They wanted to be their authentic self at home, at work, wherever they are. And so then we started to look at our programs, and we started to rewrite our promotional letters. We did some changes in the courses that we're doing so that it became something more of an expectation that whoever you are in any part of your life is who you are, and to be that. And so that way, for me, like one of the things that not everybody, but so many people during this pandemic is realizing, there's this blending between the personal life and work life, because I'm at my dining room table and other people are at their dining room tables, and some people have kids running all around, etc. And then you realize, wait a minute, this is not your work life and then your personal life, it's your life. And that's why my life going forward, I'm going to always work because I enjoy this. I'm always going to read. I'm always going to cook. I'm always going to garden. I'm always going to travel once I can always travel again. But in the meantime, hiking and biking type of things. So, I mean, that's what life is. My estimation.
Huh?
In my estimation.
No, I think that's beautiful, because it's true. So many people compartmentalize, and so many people also put off for another time. They go, well, I'm going to do this now so that I can someday do that. And then oftentimes they don't get to that because they're entrenched in doing it. I mean, obviously anything is possible. And, but I concur. I mean, I completely concur. If you love what you're doing, if you're absolutely passionate, if it thrills you and it gives you, raises the hair on your arms to do what you do, then you just keep doing it. I would look at, as a kid, when somebody would say, well, so-and-so retired from acting, I'd go, how could you do that? How could you retire? I get the business side of it, that some people don't like it, but the idea of being out there and doing what you love and wanting to do it, how can you stop?
And Rex, so I have no interest in being an actor, right? So I could see anybody retiring from being an actor.
Of course.
Why would you want to do it in the first place?
Why would anybody want to do that silly thing? No.
But thankfully, everybody has these different desires, wants, and wishes, and dreams, and drives, and all that kind of stuff, because that makes life interesting.
Well, I use a very imperfect metaphor, an analogy for things. I say that everything is a mirror, and you take the mirror and you shatter it. So source is now split and splintered into these tiny infinitesimal bits and pieces of reflective material. And now we all think we're separate, but we reflect each other. And thank goodness that Source was smart enough to say we should all be different, so that it does make everything interesting. It makes the journey the important part of it, not the destination. We'll get to the destination if we journey well. If we stop journeying, if we sit down, we quit, and that's fine too. But what I'm getting at is, I can remember being a kid, and I think a lot of people get, I'm in the back seat of the car going, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we, I hate this part of I don't want to travel. I want to be there, and now I have discovered that it's being there is one thing, but how I get there is really, truly most important. And am I enjoying what I'm doing right now? So, one of the things that just exudes from you is your enthusiasm and your eagerness and your excitement for what you do, and that is part of being happy. So that is part of I think if more of us would learn this, it would be beneficial for us in business or otherwise.
Yeah, the world will be a better place. But this is the neat thing about this big shakeup that we have with the pandemic, is that it gives us an opportunity to look at all areas of our life differently. And it doesn't give us an opportunity. It forces into looking at all of our lives' opportunity and is differently. And it's a matter of then what do we do with it? What do we do differently? What do we do the same?
Absolutely. Well, it's that's true at every turn in our life. I always say that life is a matter of choices. There's dog crap and diamonds, and it's just a matter of choosing every second. You can go one way or the other way. We're constantly confronted. But if you speak only to bless, heal, and prosper, inspire, motivate, and transform, then all is good. It doesn't mean you ignore what's going on. It means that you have a different mindset about what is going on. You're able to see, as neurolinguistic programmers, we say that we work off of re-representations and maps of reality, that we never really intersect with reality, but we have these representations. So the question that I have in terms of transformation is, how do we help people, or how does each one of us find a representation that makes life enjoyable and wonderful and glorious, instead of looking at all of the things that are problematic or wrong or destructive? And it truly is aiming your attention and your focus.
Yeah, it is. That's one of the things I love about the programs that we do, is it gives people an opportunity to practice focusing on something that is positive and transformative for them. And then it makes it so much easier to bring it out into the world. So I mentioned earlier that we do our Qigong practice every single day. And we do that on Zoom, and we go through bringing in the 5 positive emotions to help balance the energy systems of the body of happiness, peace, joy, contentment, and gratitude. Well, one of the reasons we do that, besides finding the balance in our body, which helps our body heal, which is part of the reasons that we do the Qigong, is that when you are practicing bringing those feelings, those emotions into your body and amplifying them, when you get out of your practice, you're out in real life, and you get into a situation that kind of brings you down, you have the resources to change it instantly and immediately by bringing in those emotions. That's the same thing when you listen to any of the paraliminals, even the memory supercharger paraliminals. So you listen to the paraliminal because you want to improve your memory. But the thing is that if anything ever happens in your day and things aren't going right, you can always stop for just a moment and think of that feeling that you get when you listen to the memory supercharger. And guess what? That feeling comes back. But on top of that, all those inner resources that you have, they start to come up, and they open up your ability to respond to whatever's going on in your life at the time. So that's one of the best things I think people can do, is to stay involved with their personal growth, whether it's our programs or somebody else's programs, because it's always working on those muscles inside of you so that your inner resources can come and to your as a savior, or come with you as you go through your day. Makes life a whole lot better.
That's awesome. That truly is awesome, and it is truly important. Again, people don't eat one time and then never eat again. They imbibe a little bit or a lot, depending on themselves. I
I'd like to eat all the time, Rex.
yeah. But what I mean is that you're constantly taking nourishment, in some form. And I lived in a commune for 4 years, and meditate and things like that. And I always say, people tend to want to go to an ashram and escape the world so that they can find peace within. And then they come back to the world and go, "Hey, shut up! I'm meditating here."
But the whole world is your ashram.
Exactly.
That's what you want to look at. People have altars in their house. I think that's great. People go to a church and there's altar. I think it's great. But what if you actually looked and saw everything around you as your altar? So you look behind you, see those beautiful trees. I got my whole outside right there. It is just gorgeous. As I go for walks, or as I am, at a gas station or wherever, that's all the altar. Life is so beautiful, and that's what you want to do. You want to treat everything as an altar, and everybody that you come across as people in your church, if you will. Maybe that's not the word, but who, they're part of you.
Well, and this is why I use the mirror metaphor, that we're all shards and we reflect each other. I would be in the ashram, that kind of thing, and get into these horrific fights with people. Everybody thinks the ashram is all peaceful, and you're sitting there going, "Don't you know?" And we're yelling, and then we realize at some point you go, "You know what? I'm just projecting onto this person, and they're just projecting onto me, and it's like we're doing this thing."
Yeah. And the ashram is a way to practice. It's a way to experience, so that you can bring it out into the real world. And there's a lot of ways to do that, like that, or through programs like what we do or whatever. But the whole thing is, then how do you embody it? How do you live what it is that you learn?
Well, and this is true. But going back to what you said, and which is also my point, is that the world is your ashram. There is no difference. And if you decide how it's going to be. You decide whether you like it or don't like it every single moment of the time. And you have the choice. You always have the choice. And if it's not to your liking, then you can adjust, learn from it, do something different. And if it is to your liking, you can enhance it or let it go. You can do both.
Yeah.
You can let both,
Well, that letting go is the biggest thing too. It's for everything. You let go of the good, you let go of the bad, you let go of everything nonstop. You don't have that attachment. And then all of a sudden you get into this place of neutrality. And some people think this place of neutrality is like, "Oh, I don't want to be neutral." No, but that place of neutrality is just unbelievably beautiful. It's that expression of perfection. So you don't have that highs, you don't have those lows, you got that. So, yeah.
One of my favorite Zen stories is the one who, the two disciples comparing their masters, and one says, "My master can command the thunder," and another says, "My master can control the sea," and another one says, "My master can gather the fires from around the world." And the last disciple says, "My master eats when he's hungry and sleeps when he's sleepy."
Yeah.
And I think it is true, that it is about living your life and being, I think gratitude is one of those really incredible ways to live the vibe. When let's put it into just normal vernacular. If you're feeling good, if you're thinking positive and you feel good and you're vibing high, things just seem to go better.
Well, you mentioned gratitude. So I've always been big on gratitude. No, I haven't. I've always been.
I'm glad you said
grateful. That. What's that?
I said I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, but then it hasn't been until, I don't know, recently, the last 10, 15 years, did I start to really understand the importance of it and what it means. And one of the great realizations is that it is not possible to have gratitude for something that you don't have. So let's say that you're in life right now and you're not experiencing abundance. But if you express gratitude for the abundance that's in your life, the way the universe works, the way that the mind works, is that it will create the more abundance for you, because gratitude means that you have it. So when you express gratitude for something, it means that you have it, and the universe conspires to make it true and real for you. I think that's one of the beautiful things. It's not about being grateful so you can get something, but when you're grateful, guess what? It all comes together.
Beautifully put. And it is also, the notion that things just go better with gratitude.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah.
They just go better. And any and every one of us can do this. These it's like gravity. Gravity doesn't work sometimes and then work other times. We try to understand it. We can't comprehend it. We analyze it. We do math on it and everything else. And it just works. It just is. I always tell people, if you want to learn to fly, because people say, well, I'm going to fly, and they jump off a roof, I go stand on the sidewalk and fly up. The Wright brothers were smart. They tried to take a craft off. They didn't take it to a cliff and fly down.
I've never heard that one before. That's good. I will be using that.
And lift off. That would be that makes the most sense. So, but the point is that this is all available to us, and some people will say, yeah, and they won't come to it until they're ready to come to it. And there's no judgment in somebody being ready or not ready. It's just what they are. It's like my kid is sleeping. They're sleeping and they're awake. They're sleeping. That's what they're doing. That's what's going on. There's no judgment in that. So, and yet humans will do that. They will say, well, why aren't you better along or further along, or why aren't you doing this or doing that instead? But the idea is that all of the stuff that we're talking about works if you give it the opportunity to work. It's been around since humankind has begun. It's changed the vernacular sometimes. Now we talk about different things in terms. I think of science as only validating what we already knew in most cases. It's not, they haven't discovered anything new. They rediscover something that's been around for a long, long time, and then find another way to say it to another audience at a different, but it's all the same. So gratitude is one of those things that if people put into practice, they will discover, as you say, how awesome it is.
Yep, exactly. Well put.
So I want to leave you, because we're at that point where we need to go now, and I would love to invite you back. I thoroughly am enjoying discussing this with you on the air, as well as in, when we have the opportunity to talk in person or otherwise. But I want to let you have the last word, and then I'll close out the show. So any last...
let me no. I guess my last word is do whatever you can to enjoy yourself and enjoy your life. Find that joy in every moment. And when you find that joy in every moment, guess what? It creates more of it. Somebody once said, Arnold Patton said, and then he denied it later. He said that I got it wrong, but I still think it works. And that is, if you want to do something different, if you want to move into a different space, you got to find the joy where you are right now. And then it's so much easier to move into a different space. So those are my parting words.
Perfect.
Thank you for being here. We'll talk to you again. How's that?
That's perfect. That's wonderful. Pete Bissonette, President of Learning Strategies Corporation, I thank you so much for spending your time with us and sharing your thoughts, your wisdom, and your experience in life. And I look forward to doing it again sometime. And I wish you well there in your home, your beautiful home. We didn't talk about the the word just escaped me. Oh my God, The Shining, the maze out in the back.
Oh, we can talk about that the next time.
Yeah, he's got a beautiful maze out in the back of his yard. Anyway, thank you. Namaste. Have a great day. Best wishes, and enjoy the Qigong, as I know that's coming up for you.
Coming up in a couple minutes.
All right, so you've been listening to Pete Bissonette from Learning Strategies. There will be links, available. So click on the links wherever they are, whether they're down below in the description or somewhere around this video. Be sure to click the links and go visit Learning Strategies. Meanwhile, all the best, Pete. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rex.
That's it, everybody. You've been watching Create Your Best Life with Rex. I hope you will apply the powerful principles and practices you've learned in today's show. And also click the links below to go to my website and my guests. There's powerful programs, principles, and practices waiting for you when you click those links. Do it today and create your best life ever.